Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I don't know if it happens to you, but sometimes I go to certain places and I tell my wife or whoever is with me, like, just remind me, we shouldn't come back here. Could be a restaurant. In my particular case, it's a shopping center. It's not the Aventura Mall, of course. God forbid. But there's a place that every time we go and we say, like, let's go buy this and that, and then on our way back, empty-handed, we say, like, we like to purchase online. Like, let's remember not to come back, not to make the schlep all the way here again. And then 1 or 2 months later, there we go, to that restaurant, to that place. Sometimes it's a relationship. Sometimes it's a state of our mind. We all have places that we promise ourselves to never return, and yet, once and again, we find ourselves in that place. We tend to think that it is difficult to reach some places, that it's complicated to get to some particular destination. But personally, sometimes I find it even more difficult to avoid ending in some places, to avoid going to some destinations that we know are not good for us. And this week's Parshat Shoftim, is one out of 3 places in the Torah. And when the Torah repeats something, it's because the Torah really means it. 3 places in the Torah in which the mitzvah of not returning to Egypt is stated. I don't know if you were aware, but one of the 613 mitzvot is the mitzvah of never returning to Egypt. I know some people may feel attracted. There are very cool museums there, the pyramids. I've always wanted to go there. And there is a lot of discussion as to whether the Torah really means not going back to Egypt, including for tourism, or what the Torah actually means is do not relocate yourself in Egypt ever again. But the Torah warns us that our exodus from Egypt is a one-way trip. We go from Egypt to Israel, but to Egypt we never return. And of course, the rabbis are going to be puzzled by this. Why is it? Why is it that going to Egypt is forbidden? After all, Egypt today is not the same Egypt as it was 3,000 years ago. Some rabbis in particular really struggle with this prohibition. For example, Maimonides. When Maimonides writes his famous codes of Jewish law, he needs to include this mitzvah as one of the 613. But where did Maimonides live? In Egypt. A few miles outside of Cairo, in a place called Fustat, he was the chief rabbi of the Jewish community in Egypt. How do you tell your people, we shouldn't actually be here? We should never have returned to this place where we are thriving, by the way. And the Torah is very clear because the Torah knows that sometimes, even when we achieved Exodus, after heavy efforts, we will be tempted to return. Because that's the way nostalgia operates. We tend to idealize the past and to believe that that place in which we invested so much energy in order to live is a place that will be tempting because it is familiar. And it's very difficult to compete with familiar. Sometimes when we are lost, when we are in distress, when we are walking the journey in the wilderness, like the Israelites when they journeyed through the desert, and we are exhausted, we look behind and we say, after all, it wasn't that bad. Let's try the restaurant again. Let's meet with this toxic person again. Perhaps they changed. I don't know. After all, it's a relative, it's an old friend, it's someone that we've been married to. There is an innate tendency in human beings to return to places that we should never return. And when it comes to Egypt, for the Jewish tradition, that represents narrowness, it represents anguish, it represents oppression. And you would say, like, why would someone ever want to return to a place where they were oppressed? And then you open, for example, the book of Exodus, and you see that when the Israelites are about to embark in this journey through the desert and they have no food, instead of trusting that eventually there will be food somewhere. They say, remember in Egypt, there were fish and watermelons and zucchinis. That's what they miss. There was garlic, there were leeks. And of course, they don't remember that the Egyptian killed them, threw their babies into the sea. This selective exercising of memory in which we only remember the good and we forget how difficult it was to live that narrow place usually pushes us back. There's a beautiful story in the book of Genesis about a woman. We don't even know her name, but we know that she was married to Abraham's nephew. She's Lot's wife. And she has a ticket that very few people got. She had an exit ticket from Sodom and Gomorrah. God is going to destroy the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, set them in fire. Not even 10 people are going to survive Sodom and Gomorrah. But there are 4 people who are blessed with an exit ticket. Lot, his 2 daughters, and his wife. And his wife, instead of looking forward to the uncertain, difficult, but eventually promising future that she has ahead, she decides to look back. And the Torah freezes this woman and transforms her into a pillar of salt. Perhaps a way of reminding us that as tempting as the past may look, it is a trap. And if we turn behind and start walking in the wrong direction, it's going to push us in a way that the second Exodus will be even more difficult. The rabbis in the Talmud, in Tractate Sukkah, have a list of moments in which Jews return to Egypt. And some of these moments at the beginning look good and promising. For example, according to the Talmud, the synagogue of Alexandria in Egypt was the largest synagogue on earth. So much so that people from the far back couldn't see the Chazan, the cantor, at the front of the synagogue, and they had to have a system so that they could know which part of the services they were going through. Jews thrived in Egypt in many occasions, but according to the Talmud, it never ended well, because there are some places to which we should not return. As we start the month of Elul, and we start embarking in this exercise of soul searching and introspection, many of us are going to look forward and think about which are the destinations that we want to reach in the year to come. Many of us have this bucket list of things that are going to be our Jewish New Year resolutions that we want to conquer in 5786. I want to invite you to also build the other list. Which are the places to which you don't want to return? Which are the places that this year you are going to say, I'm not going back there, and you really mean it? And of course, I'm not talking about shopping centers of restaurants. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about ways of dealing with yourself. I'm talking about states of mood that sometimes harm you. I am talking about arguments and discussions with people you love. Perhaps that's why the Torah wants us to never look back and to have nostalgia about our life in Egypt. It's not about physical Egypt. It's not about preventing us from visiting the brand new museum in Cairo or scuba diving in the Red Sea. It is about teaching us that to some places we should never return. I wish all of us in this month of Elul the strength to find those places and to promise ourselves that this year we're not returning. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom.